Welcome everyone to our fourth seminar in the series of the digital future for business and society, perspectives on AI challenges and opportunities. So it's good morning to everyone logging in from the US. Good afternoon to all our guests and friends from Europe. Good evening to everyone from India, Southeast Asia, and a late good evening to folks joining in from Australia and New Zealand. This seminar series is hosted jointly by Professor Yogesh Dwivedi from the Emerging Markets Research Center, EMaRC for short, Department of Business, School of Management, Swansea University in UK, and Professor Ramakrishnan Raman, who is Director, Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Pune, India, and also Dean Faculty of Management at Symbiosis International Deemed University, India. This entire seminar series, which consists of 15 seminars, and today is the fourth one, it's supported by Center for Technology, Innovation, Management and Enterprise, the acronym is TIME, the University of Kent, UK, Digital Marketing and Analytics Special Industry Group, Academy of Marketing, Grenoble, Graduate School of Management, Swansea Innovation Lab, Swansea University, the E-Business and E-Government Special Industry Group, British Academy of Management, and the UK Academy for Information Systems. To tell you all a little bit about what this seminar series includes, this has been inspired by various perspectives on artificial intelligence and its transformative potential presented in a recent perspective article by Dwivedi et al. 2019. AI undoubtedly offers a transformative potential for the augmentation and even potential replacement of human tasks within a wide range of industrial, intellectual, and social applications. The pace of change of this technology age is staggering, with new breakthroughs in algorithmic machine learning and autonomous decision making, creating new opportunities for continued innovation. The impact could be significant, with industries and sectors ranging from agriculture, finance, which will be our topic of discussion today, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, supply chain, logistics, and utilities, all could be potentially disrupted by AI. So in this seminar series, we will hear and see various perspectives from a number of leading expert speakers to highlight the opportunities and challenges posed by the rapid emergence of AI. Allow me now to introduce our speaker for today. So we will be hearing from Dr. Emmanuel Mogaji on AI adoption in financial services provision in emerging economies. Dr. Emmanuel Mogaji is Senior Lecturer in Advertising and Marketing Communications at the University of Greenwich, London, UK. His research interests are in artificial intelligence, digital marketing, and service brand management. Dr. Emmanuel has previously worked as marketing communications executive, responsible for creative designs and managing marketing campaigns, liaising and building relationships with a range of stakeholders. He has published peer-reviewed journal articles, book chapters, and presented his works in many national and international conferences. His publications have appeared in the International Journal of Information Management, Journal of Product and Brand Management, and Australasian Marketing Journal and International Journal of Bank Marketing. So with that, if I can invite Dr. Emmanuel Mogaji to share his thoughts with us on AI adoption in financial services provision in emerging economies. Dr. Emmanuel, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you so much. It's like I was saying earlier on in the chat. It's nice for us to have this platform to share ideas and for us to discuss about the role of AI in our lives generally. And I think, like you said in the introduction, it's something that is affecting every sector. And that's why I think this platform is very, very useful for us to share these ideas. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity to present. It's a pleasure. And again, thank you so much. So to everybody that's listening to me, I think you've done the introduction. My name is Emmanuel Mogaji. I work at University of Greenwich. And today I will be talking about AI adoption in financial services provision in emerging economies. So please allow me, let me just try and, can you see my screen? I'm trying to put it in a presentation mode. Okay. Okay. Yes. So a bit of background. Yes, we can recognize that AI is considered to be in the context of trends such as digitalization, automation, and big data. So I think that's something we all seems to recognize now, and it can be considered a buzzword because now it's something that's wherever you go, everything seems to be around artificial intelligence. It seems to be that's relevant buzzword, and everybody's trying to find how it's relevant to their business. But we also need to consider that it's a disruptive technology because things that were done maybe 5 years ago manually are now being done automatically, and we recognize this to be very, very relevant, perhaps depending on the side of the spectrum in which you are. Are you really supporting, is it really disrupting your technology, or you are working toward disrupting other people's technology? So again, that's what we need to recognize as a bit of background. And we also think that yes, AI makes prediction informed by massive amounts of existing data that can be codified, stored, manipulated by computers. So our understanding about AI is growing, which I think that's very, very good. And that aligns well with this whole idea of this kind of meeting, and also building up from the publication we did in International Journal of Information Management. We recognize that this awareness is increasing, and it's now important for us to recognize how it fits into the different sectors, how it fits into our daily life, Internet of Things, how about in healthcare, in agriculture, and also in financial services. But today, this background, I just want to position it in context of financial services and emerging economies. So this is something that we recognize AI is applicable in all sectors. AI is important in every aspect of life. But this topic is about financial services, and importantly, in regards to emerging economies. We want to recognize the fact that yes, big data, automation, digitalization, those are all features of artificial intelligence. But what about financial services? How does this apply to financial services? We recognize that financial services is regulated. You don't just come into the business and do your own things. You don't just come into the sector. It's very regulated, it's rational, and it's high involving. That is, people who want to use financial services, we often think very well. It's not a decision you just wake up to take. This is something you want to process to make sure you are making the right decision. And also is an intangible service. This is not something you can brag about. You can say, you know what, I've got this. It's something people don't see, and therefore it could be seen as hidden and not what people will associate with you. Perhaps unless you show them your credit card and show them, you know what, I bank with this particular bank. But often, financial services is an intangible service. Then ultimately, we recognize the context in which I'm then making this presentation about the emerging economies. We recognize the inherent challenges with these economies, the type of often informal economy whereby you can't really track who is who. Remember, it's about financial services. Often this is about cash transaction. Often this is about a one-to-one. There's that less reliance on a structured system in financial services. That also affects how much AI can come in, and also in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of data, in terms of what they have to support the financial services, and also the role of artificial intelligence. And also we recognize the impact of access and adoption, especially to technology. There's this inherent challenge about emerging economies, and that's where we think is different from perhaps what we have in most of the developed countries. And that is why this information cannot just be cascaded down like that. One cap doesn't fit all. We need to recognize that yes, AI in a developed country might not be something you just transfer or something you just adopt to an emerging economy, because they've got their own inherent challenges, which shapes the way you want to engage with that technology. So we recognize that fintech is bringing a long-term societal transformation change, and likewise, AI is opening more opportunities for financial services industry. But we recognize that yes, the emerging economy is still that's overshadowing, that's overarching idea, the overarching challenges that affect the role of AI in financial services. Fintech is changing, and again, that is something we need to recognize, and also the role of AI. So today, I'm presenting a research that's carried on to understand the application of AI in banking, and also from the perspective of developers. So we need to recognize what's the application in AI. We've got the chatbot and the assistant, AI used in lending decision, AI used in relationship management for you to know who your customers are, how do you want to get involved with them, how do you want to give them the right information. Perhaps they now have, they got married, you want to introduce them to maybe a mortgage, they got a new baby, you want to introduce them to maybe a savings account for their child. Also, AI is used for fraud detection. Perhaps if there is a changes in the pattern of which you have been using your card, the machine can actually identify that and notify you. And also, you've got the personalized banking, you've got process automation and credit score and analytics. So these are the general idea of AI in banking. Also, as I said earlier on, this is applicable in different other contexts, different other areas, but we just need to know that yes, within this setting of financial services, AI has got its own unique role, and that is something we recognize. But ultimately, like I will say in this presentation, we've got those three different layers: the AI itself applicable in other areas, financial services, which is specific for this presentation, and ultimately the emerging economy in which these financial services are being provided. So the research question in this research is to understand what factors are affecting financial service provision in emerging economies. So you recognize the fact that you've got the financial fintech developers, they are responsible for developing the AI system, and they share it with the bank, and also some other financial services provider in order to reach out to the consumers. But what we seem to recognize now is the growing prospect of financial technology developers engaging directly with the consumers, also still passing through the whole idea of financial service providers. So that is where you have this maybe like app-only banks, whereby they are not the conventional high street banks, but all these financial transactions are carried out on the phone, is carried out on the go on mobile, and they are trying to engage more with the consumers. So the focus here is actually the challenges with the fintech trying to bring in AI into financial services provision for consumers. So this is more like the scope in which I will be shaping this presentation, for us to recognize that yes, fintech has got the idea for the AI and for them to provide their services. They are operating within financial services sector and trying to engage with the consumers. So the methodology was to talk to tech developers working on fintech for customers and also for banks. So that is an area where I try to approach them to say, okay, we've got developers that are working with banks to create their AI and to create their system, maybe like chatbots. And also we've got developers that are working directly with the consumers. So they are developing their product and their services to reach out to the consumers. They're developing their product and services to market to the consumer straight. Also, this recognizes the fact that these technology are disrupting the banks. So in my previous slide, you've got the developers who are also encroaching into the whole context, whole market of banks. So banks previously, you might see them as like buildings. You go in there, you deposit your money, and you withdraw your money. But with the technology, the fintech companies are trying to also encroach into the financial sector, financial services sector, while they are still providing that service to the consumer. So they've got these two parts. You either support the bank, develop systems for them, develop tools for them to able to effectively engage with their consumers, or develop this technology yourself that you can sell directly to the consumers. But again, you still need to see that in the context of financial service provision. So we talked to those financial services, the fintech developers. It was a semi-structured interview to understand how has been the experience working on AI and financial services in emerging economies. So the data were qualitatively analyzed. The focus was actually on Africa. So that's the website to startup list.africa. Try to find out who are those that are working within financial services and fintech, to reach out to them saying, okay, we know you are working with this. How has been your experience? What has been your challenges? What has gone on well? What has gone on wrong? What are the positive? What are the negative? What do you think are the factors that are affecting the adoption of AI in financial services provision in Africa? What do you think it's going on? And it's interesting to find that, yes, we identify 5 key points, which was the key findings in terms of the challenges, in terms of the problems that they are experiencing with regards to the services in which they are providing, and also the things that affect them. So first was the awareness. Secondly was infrastructure. The third point was acceptance. The fourth was government policy. And the last point was human resources. So I will take my time to explain these and to perhaps share some insight on it. So awareness, firstly, they feel brands don't know what they need. So when I mean branded, they mean the banks they're working with. So often these guys says they propose these ideas to the bank. They tell them, we can do this for you. We've developed this AI algorithm to help you do this and to do that. And often they feel that the banks don't even know what they do. Perhaps they feel that, yes, this is not what we need. And therefore, they are not ready to adopt this to enhance their own financial service provision. If you take your mind back to the diagram I showed you before, you've got the fintech working with the banks to reach out to the consumers. So at this stage, they were telling us that, yes, you know what, the banks don't even know what they need. Perhaps they've been hearing about artificial intelligence, but there is no awareness about how they can use it and what they can do with it, and perhaps how that can help their own service provision. And also, we've talked about the consumers don't know what is available. So you just talk about the AI, because often when consumers in this part of the world sees bank, they recognize that, yes, is a place. You go in, you deposit your money, you come back. You go to use your ATM and you try to just at least engage with what the bank is offering. And that is something that is affecting the possibilities of AI in this part of the world, because so far most of the consumers don't know what is available. And that again is on the part of the developer to perhaps communicate and share what is going on with their audience. Because if the consumers don't know that, yes, you can download this app to help you build your savings, you can download this app to get access to other loans, you can download this app to monitor how you are spending your money, and this app can give you some recommendation and can give you some saving ideas, then that adoption will be very low, because consumers don't know what is available there in the market for them. Second point is about the infrastructure. So this is actually a big one for them, especially when it comes to data. Because this is something that the developers were trying to share, that yes, in Africa, for especially trying to recognize the fact that the data is not structured in a way that can help them to understand the consumers and also to suggest and to develop the algorithm. Because this is something we all recognize, that data is important in AI development. And if that is not available, it sort of slows down their work. For example, people don't even know information about themselves, and even the information that is out there in the system is not well structured. It's not all linked together. For example, you're talking about credit check or credit bureaus. Again, when you don't have companies that are able to coordinate, for example, doing a credit check, because the data are not collected centrally, that poses a challenge for developer, a challenge for somebody who wants to create an idea. And again, they need to start working on that to make sure it's something they want to address. So that is something that we consider as a challenge for them. And secondly, the cost. Cost was another implication that these developers recognize, and that's suggests the need for them to look for funding elsewhere, look for funding maybe through venture capitalists, to recognize the fact that yes, we want to do some things and we need that money. Especially when it comes to server, you see that yes, often they don't have that infrastructure in Africa where they can really store their information. Then they need to look for elsewhere to support that. Then cost becomes an issue. You've seen developers who have actually stopped working because they can no longer sustain this. Also because on the previous slide, banks don't know what they need, consumers don't know what they need. So it's a matter of just developing these ideas, developing these innovations and AI system that nobody wants to use and nobody is ready to buy. And there's that limitations. And also mobile adoption, that is still a problem, but they recognize that it's something that is growing, it's something that is getting there, but so far it's still a problem, because we recognize, again, in Africa, the number of young population is rising, and therefore there is that mobile adoption, there is that interest in using technology, and there is that interest in using AI system. But so far, in terms of the general market, in terms of the financial services provision, that is still a challenge. And ultimately, you've got internet being a challenge as well, because they see if we develop this system, the consumers need the internet to sustain it. If they don't have it, yes, that's a problem. And it also affects them in trying to build that system to encourage people to use it. Power, electricity, it's also a challenge. And that is also part of the infrastructure that is affecting the way in which AI could have been shared across Africa with regards to financial services provision. The third point is about the acceptance, because like I said also, financial services is more of saying like, yes, I come there, you give me my money, I go out. And also because of the informal economy, business is seen as usual through cash. So if everything is dealt with cash, there's no way you want to track this down. There's no way you want to organize or understand the financial transaction of people if they're just solely doing cash transaction. And also because of the lack of trust in technology, like, you know what, I just want to see somebody that will answer my question. And these developers recognizes that people don't trust technology, people don't trust them to deliver. They just see you are a new bank, you are just something on the phone. How can I track you down? If there's a problem, where do I go? So that is the problem for developers that are trying to go directly to the consumers, because there's that lack of trust. Because if it's going through the bank, yes, they can align that trust with the bank, say the bank is providing me this. But if it's coming from the developer straight to consumers, that is where that lack of trust is very, very critical, because they feel that, yes, you are just somebody on the phone and you expect me to download this and you expect me to just bring my money and to access money. So the challenge for the developers is actually for them to build that trust, for them to make sure the consumers recognizes the fact that, yes, we are there for you, you can trust us. Ultimately, that is where the policymaker comes in. but I'll be coming there later. And also the capabilities. This is where the banks often feel that the developers in Africa have, that is something they've reported, that yes, they can't deliver, because often they see that yes, we have to go abroad, we have to go to Europe to get these developers to work for you. Who are you to support us? What technology do you have to do this for us? And this is something that I think it's very, very relevant, because when you don't trust the capabilities of developers within your economy, and the bank decide to then go elsewhere to look for that. And also it's more of them maybe in Europe just sending you the design to come and use in your market, whereby you don't really they don't understand, and it might not fit into the system in which you operate. So the capability is one of those problems that the developers are having with regards to AI adoption, because the banks, the financial services provider feels these developers in Africa, perhaps in this part of the world, are not capable of delivering this service. Therefore, they don't want to take that gamble. Therefore, they don't want to use them, because they feel you are not capable enough. And that's the challenge that the developers are having. They're having the lack of trust from the consumers. They're having the lack of capabilities from trusting their capabilities from the bank. And again, that poses that extra challenge for them. That poses that limitations in terms of how they want to creatively come up with ideas. So you come up with an idea and people feel you are not able to deliver it. So just to get you know that this is the focus from the consumer, from the developer's point of view. These are the developers that are trying to develop the AI algorithm, the AI system, the product that can enhance financial services provision. But here we see the banks not trying to engage them because they feel they are not capable enough. Then you've got the government policy. So here, the banks, the financial services providers generally, and also the developers are stuck with the idea of the policies not helping in terms of what they want to do. Recently now in Nigeria, there was this ban sort of from the central bank regards to cryptocurrency and all those things. And people feel, you know what, this is something we found to be innovative, we want to explore. But when the banks and when the policymakers are not really helping out in terms of the rules, in terms of the regulations, well, we agree the banks and the policymakers might have a reason to protect the interest of the consumers, but the developers feels these rules and policy are not really helping them out. It can be very limiting. For example, when you try to get your banking license to provide a financial service, it's often to be challenged. And that is why the developers might just have to liaise with the bank straight, because the banks have got that protection from the central bank and the policymakers. And also, when you see other people trying to come into the industry, for example, we see the telco companies trying to come in on board. You see the fintech developers try to come in on board. There is that policy which is limiting them about what they can do. And that also goes on with the idea of the regulatory requirements. How much the government or the policymakers will expect the developers to have in stock for them to get that license. And ultimately, this lack of access to data. So for example, developers would like to access maybe the national database, maybe the national identity or something like that, that yes, we can develop this AI algorithm to understand who our customers are, to understand the needs, to understand the different location of people. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, somebody was actually trying to develop an idea to understand where people are that need that money. For example, people in the villages that we need that palliative care. How do you get them the money? Because there is no data that recognizes who is who. People are in many of the rural areas, they don't even have passports, they don't have any form of identification, nobody really knows them. and you are developing a system that you want to make sure it encourages financial inclusion, there is no data for you to work with, because those people you want to work with, you either go there and start collecting the data yourself, but again, that is not possible. Then you rely on the government to do that. That is not possible. So the lack of access to data from the government and the policymaker was also considered to be a challenge. Then the last point in terms of the challenge, it's what they describe as human resources. So this is the people they need, and this aligns with the problem they raised in the point 3 about the lack of capabilities, because they feel that yes, they need people to help them develop this artificial intelligence to help in enhancing financial services provision, but they do not have enough people. And therefore, there is this challenge in being more creative. There is this challenge in convincing the bank to say we can deliver. There is this challenge saying what we can do this for you, because this is not an industry that is well grounded and you have a lot of people in it. That's the challenge. So the people are working there. There's this present need for more people to come on board, for more developers to come on board, for more people to recognize the need that yes, there is a gap in knowledge and there is a business need for us to address here. And also in terms of the skills to meet that need, because it's not something you can just come on board. It has to have a form of training. You need to understand this process is technical, and therefore there is this challenge about the pipeline. That is, who are those people that we are training to come on board to move this initiative forward? Because the point is, there is also this challenge of brain drain. So if you have people in Africa that yes can develop these ideas, they are more likely to be poached to Europe, to America, because they feel they've got the resources to do that. Because you are trying to provide a service for your bank, for your people in this place, and they don't really want to accept you, but somebody in Europe is calling you to come because you've got the skills. There is that brain drain as well, because people are being poached outside for them to go and work and to support the system, because the infrastructure is there, the working environment is there, the technology is there, the data is there, everything is there. But the human resources is a challenge for developers in Africa who are trying to work on artificial intelligence in financial services. They need people, the skills, and also the need to bring in more people on board to continue that challenge, to more of a pipeline to say, in 5 years, do we have the right people? Do we have the needed skills to push this idea forward? So even from the developer's point of view, and also from the banks feel, okay, if we outsource this 5 years to come, what is going to happen? And that is the challenge that the developers are also having in trying to convince the bank, in trying to convince the consumer that, you know what, we can sustain this. We will get people to come on board. We will train people to do this for us. So those are the 5 challenges that we identified as the inhibiting factors for adopting AI for financial services in emerging economies. We talked about the awareness, we've talked about the government policies, we talked about the human resources, we talked about the trust, and also in terms of the capabilities. But ultimately, there's need for us to identify some practical implication. Firstly, I go with the idea that yes, data as the new oil. So there should be that awareness. That is, we should recognize that yes, there is oil. That is, yes, there is data. There is something we can do with this. So this implication is actually relevant for different stakeholders, relevant for developers, relevant for researchers, relevant for educators, relevant for policymakers, and also for consumers. There should be that awareness that, you know what, there is this technology that can help me. So awareness, there is the oil. Yes, data, that's the new oil. The human resources to distill that oil and to make sure that, yes, we get it out. And I also go with the idea of the regulators to monitor the distillation and also the distribution of this new oil that we found, and also consumers to recognize that, yes, there are ways that we can use this oil. So just a brief of summary. Fintech It's important for them to keep innovating. That's something that's very important. And something we can recognize is that lobbying. Yes, they need to recognize the fact that things will not just happen by staying in their innovation hub. Things will not happen by just developing. There should be lobbying, especially with the maybe House of Representatives, the members of Parliament, the government, for them to let people know that, you know what, there is something going on that we are developing. There is something going on that we are doing that can help this economy. There is something we are doing that we can shape the way financial services is provided. Perhaps people and those in government do not have the necessary understanding, do not have the awareness, and that is where the lobbying comes in. That is talking to the right people, talking to the policy holders, the policy makers, and for them to recognize the fact that, yes, there is possibilities for us to do something here. We also recognize the idea of training in terms of bringing people on board to help them, training in terms of ensuring that, yes, you've got the people on board that can help you to achieve this. And also, there's need for ethical data capturing. And because there was an incident that somebody opened an app to borrow some money, and the permission from the app was that the person who is downloading the app, we give the app the permission to have access to all their contact list. And when this guy did not pay up his money, this app was automatically sending text messages to everybody on the person's app saying, you know what, Sam borrowed money from us. He has not paid us. Would you tell Sam to pay from us? And again, you can understand the pressure that Sam will be on. When everybody on his contact list is calling him Sam, this company sent a message that you borrowed money. Again, this company sent you money, that sent me a text message that you borrowed money. So again, we want to understand that, yes, those ethical data capturing is very important, because if Sam should not share with everybody, you know what, this app actually thought they were helping me, but instead they embarrassed me by sending messages to everybody in my contact. Again, that can also affect the way people will adopt this, because they feel, you know what, I don't want to do with all these tech companies. You don't know what they are doing with you. You don't know the amount of access they have to you. And that is something that, yes, the tech developers need to be mindful of. And also in terms of safety and diversity, the non-discrimination and fairness in terms of the algorithm. Again, this is not just race. This is not just about gender, but to recognize that, yes, what are we developing and how is it helping the consumers that we are trying to target? Secondly, talk about the financial service provider. Yes, they are the big ones here because they need this technology, and that is why they need to recognize the need. They need to gain sufficient understanding of AI and other technology used in the business. So because this fits on from this idea of lack of awareness about the technology, and for them to recognize that, yes, we need this business, we need this to run. And secondly, there's need for them to gain the appropriate skill and expertise to oversee the risk and opportunities arising from AI. Perhaps the chief technology officer needs to recognize there is possibilities of using AI, but if I don't know much about it, if I can't even discuss with developers, then I'm not helping my customers, not helping my brand. So financial providers, the staff, the directors, the leadership, the management needs to gain appropriate skills and expertise to oversee this risk. And also in selecting the right company or the team to develop the AI. So aligning with their own AI governance principle. What do you stand for as a brand? Who are you working with? So again, this is a bank recognizing the fact that, yes, there are many opportunities out there, but who are we likely to work with? Who are we likely to engage with? And what is it out there that can be done? Who do you select to work with your team? Remember, there was a challenge about capabilities. There was a challenge about not having the right people to do it. So it's left for the financial services providers to make sure they align with people who can work with them. And also the ethical data collection, it also applies to the bank to make sure that, yes, what information are they collecting about their banks and how are they using it? And also supporting customers to use technology. This is something that is important. So you've got three stakeholders here, the developers working on the AIs, giving it to the banks. The bank are the second stakeholders, and the consumers are the third stakeholders. So if the banks have this technology, it's important for the consumers to be aware of it. So that is where communication comes in. That is where that's awareness, letting people know, you know what, this technology is available for you. It explores your banking transaction and can give you some advice. This is not human doing it, this is a machine doing it, and it can give you an unbiased support to make a better financial decision. So the banks needs to provide more financial more support in terms of customers, and also engaging with policymakers and other relevant stakeholders on AI governance, because we see that yes, the policymakers might have a challenge in understanding how this works, but if they have this engagement with stakeholders and policymakers, then this can be very helpful in showcasing the benefits of AI in financial service provision. Thirdly, we've got the point for customers. There should be that awareness that yes, know what is out there. There is that education, and also the need for them to take control, to ask questions like, you know what, you are collecting this data, what are you using it for? To probe the developers and for them to challenge the AI governance and implementation, okay? Consumers need to take responsibility for their data and for them to ask questions, for them to challenge. AI is not just there to be gallivanting around or to just be used irresponsibly. Consumers also have a right to challenge the developers, to challenge the banks, saying, what is going on? How are you using my data? And you can see what happened with WhatsApp recently when everybody seems to be concerned, like, yes, you updated your privacy policy. Then people started raising concern, what is going on? So I think bank as well needs to be aware that, yes, consumers have got the right to ask questions. And this is where the policymakers comes in to empower the consumers, perhaps going with the idea of the GDPR for them to give the consumers the rights and the permission to ask the developers and the banks about the way they are using their data, and ultimately to provide feedback to let them know this is working, this is not working. Because the more feedback the developers have, the more they are likely to change and to update their system and algorithm. The policymakers, yes, they need to know who is responsible for what. Is it technology? Is it technology? Is it the financial services provision? Is it consumer protection? They need to know what is what. Also, there needs to be an involvement with stakeholders. Ultimately, they need to recognize it's a complex terrain. Yes, so this is something that's very important. You don't just come in and stop everything. You want to understand that there is an extent to which this regulation applies, and also to question their support for the ecosystem. What are they doing to support the developers? What are they doing to support the adoption of AI? And also to develop policy that will drive innovation, to make sure people are recognized and people are supported to come up with good ideas, and also to support the idea of ethical data collection. So lastly, there is implication for education institutions. So firstly, there's need to update their curriculum to meet their growing needs. So when you talk about AI in universities, education in technology, in computer science, those needs to be updated. There should be a partnership with tech companies. This is to feed into the pipeline to support the need for human resources to achieve that. Partnership with technologies, this is about developing the pipeline and also exploring beyond universities. There could be tech hubs whereby people come in to learn. It could not be just for a normal 4 years university degree, but maybe a 2 years, a practical internship session whereby people explore beyond what the university are offered, and also a possible partnership and exchange. So that's my key point from here. And in conclusion, as I bring this to an end, we recognize that here there is prospect for AI in financial services, emerging economies. Though there are challenges, the customers are expecting a lot. They are seeing what is going on and they really want to get on board. And also with the growing population, the consumers are more demanding. They want more. They have seen things that's being done. They are reading, they're observing, and they want more. So that also puts developers on their toes to increase their capabilities and to gain more market share in the financial service provision. And also there's need for policy to help and to bring in the right strategic approach to enable and to make sure that, yes, the right support is provided for financial services in emerging economies. So thank you so much for your time. I look forward to your feedback and any questions from this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel. It was a pleasure listening to your thoughts. Africa is indeed one of the fastest growing economies of the world. In fact, if you go and read any economic forecasts, Africa is the continent whose time is coming. And
Yes.
It is in the space where possibly Southeast Asia was 20 years ago or 15 years ago, with a young demographic pattern and also increased wants, increased demands. And the whole region is economically growing, I think, very, very fast.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Yes.
And to add to that, there are a whole bunch of emerging economies. India, China is probably a developed economy. Other countries in Southeast Asia, Indonesia is a classic example.
Yes.
Large numbers of people. I mean, India is 1.3 billion people. Indonesia, about 260 million people. So
Yes.
the power of absorbing AI-driven fintech services, it kind of is mind-boggling, the sheer scale of transactions.
Thank you so much for the feedback. I see some question here, some thoughts. Yes.
Yes,
I see
indeed.
one like there is a potential conflict of interest. Yes, I recognize that. And I don't know if you saw that my diagram, that is why the bank seems to be top. We recognize that. And again, that is the challenge for the banks. I will see that. So not really a conflict of interest, but we say the changing market dynamics. Because if the big banks don't want to do this, the small guys are coming to take them off. So I don't see it as a conflict of interest, like, yes, I'm developing this tool for you. If you don't want to use it as Mr. Bank, sorry, I will bypass you and send it to my consumer street. So I think it's not really a conflict of interest, but it's the dynamics within the market. That is what technology is coming to disrupt. So if the banks are not ready to accept this, then the developers are there to encroach their market. But the advantage I would think the bank have is that trust. The consumers will say, this is coming from a bank, I can trust it, and this is coming from an app, which I think that is a challenge. But ultimately, I think with the second point, that is where the regulators come in. So I think, again, Sandeep, thank you so much for sharing that. That is where that regulators come in to make sure that, yes, they are protecting the interest of the customers and also the interest of the banks and also the developers. But also, I think that is where the policymakers need to know what is it that we are regulating, because they don't just want to put a blank policy on everything. So I think that is where that challenge comes in, that yes, you want to protect fraud. And I think that's a very relevant point, fraud and protect customers with regards to the cryptocurrency in Nigeria, because the bank, the central bank, thinking they are protecting the customers and fraud, but you have people who are genuine, who are really doing this thing, and they felt, you know what, you've put a blanket on everybody thinking this is bad. So I think to avoid that and to allow for innovation, policymakers need to be mindful of the way they separate the good from the bad. Yes. And I see JC saying research direction, interplay of blockchain and AI financial services. Thank you very much. That's also a very valid point. Blockchain, I think that's something very going on. But I think the challenge so far is the lack of understanding about it first, because it's more of, I see it as more of an advanced level, because discussing with the consumers is like with the developers, they felt this is something that is going on, but again, it's like that buzzword. Everybody seems to be talking about it, but nobody seems to know how it really works. So I really recognize there is that need for a research direction in that area. Thank you so much.
I think Professor Yogesh would like to add. Welcome, Professor Yogesh, please.
Thank you. My apology. I was in a meeting and could not join at the beginning. So I missed some of your talk, Emmanuel. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
What I want to say, especially in emerging economies, particularly in African region, I think if you look at West, it's very highly regulated sector, financial sector, and it's not easy to bypass the banks, because it's not easy for new fintechs to to fulfill what government want them to fulfill.
Yes.
However, in Africa, you have some of the really great experiences. For example, in Kenya, a very long time ago, they launched this M-Pesa, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Mobile money,
M-Pesa
yes.
has been very, very successful venture in African region, which not only in terms of technology, but also for empowerment, rural empowerment or empowerment of poor people, where they could not actually borrow the money from bank, but they could borrow the money through the apps.
Yes.
M-Pesa or some other apps, but this has been. So I think maybe the hurdle little less is in Africa, and better possibilities are there to experiment AI-based services.
Yes.
And another thing is, I mean, I could be completely wrong, but the possibility of biases might be less because large population is homogeneous. So so companies doesn't have to worry too much about biases, unless of course within African region you have tribes and those kind of things. If they're not represented well, then it might be problem. But largely, I can see less problem in emerging economies than the well-developed Western world. That's just my thought. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think I will start with the bias part. I think that is something very relevant. In Africa, I think it's more of a tribe, not race. So I think that is something that is different. Like, yes, it's easier for you to manage yourself and to recognize that. And also with regards to being able to come into the market, I think the challenge is the policymakers trying to have a blanket ban on everything. So again, it's left for the developers to see. That is why I think I suggested lobbying. That is where that education needs to come in, that, you know what, we can do this. We can do this. Don't just think we are bad. We are not. We want to support the bank to ensure that financial inclusion. So I think that lack of understanding about the possibilities, that is where it is a problem. Like in the West, they know what is possible. They know what technology can do. And therefore, they are being mindful of who do we allow to come into this system. But in Africa, I could see that, yes, they don't even have the knowledge about the possibilities, and that poses a challenge. But again, that opens opportunity for that research, for us to develop this further and to recognize the fact that there are prospects, very huge prospects. Europeans come in, like, develop that idea, make sure it's contextualized to the local setting, whereby biases and all those things are not relevant, and be able to effectively transfer it to the consumers with a low entry barrier. In Africa, in terms of barrier, it's low. It's not like in the developed world, whereby the policymakers are the gatekeepers. You can't just come in anyhow. So the entry barrier is low in Africa, but we need that technology, we need that awareness, and we need that human resources to achieve this. So thank you so much for your feedback.
Dr. Raman, your thoughts on AI and any questions for Dr. Emmanuel?
No, nothing specific. It's already 7:30. Thank you, Professor Emmanuel, for your time and for the session. And thank you, Professor Yogesh, for joining, although late. Thank you for making it. In fact, we enjoyed this session. This was the 4th session, and it went very well. We still have about 45 plus people who are still on this online seminar today, and I'm sure it will be a lot learning for them. It was a great value add for all of them, and more to come. In fact, the seminar series is going to go till June. These are only my remarks. I don't have anything else as comments or questions. Professor Sandeep, back to you.
Sure. Dr. Emmanuel, there's another question in the chat box.
Okay.
So I think it's still Sandeep Sisodia who's saying, in defense of the banks, you do not want a lack of control or irresponsible lending behaviors, or else you might have another financial crash.
It is. And again, I think I responded to Sandeep. Thank you so much for raising this thought-provoking question. Like, yes, we are stuck in the middle, but we need to recognize technology is here to disrupt. Technology is here to change things. So if you are not ready to change, we will move past you. So I understand there's going to be a challenge irresponsible banking, like I said about a company sending messages to everybody on somebody's contact list that you borrowed money. Again, no, how would you track people? There is no data to find out somebody borrowed money. You can't track them down. There is that challenge. But notwithstanding, we need to recognize that in all this bad, there is still a good. So let us see how we can extract that good and to gradually make it better to overcome the bad. So I think we know financial problem will always be there, but we just have to see how we can use technology to do that. So thank you so much for your feedback. It's been nice sharing this platform with you, and I appreciate this time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Most welcome. Yes, Professor Yogesh, please.
Yeah, I mean, Emmanuel, you might have come across that what banks are doing. They're directly not developing fintech and AI-based application by themselves due to regulation itself. But what they're doing, they're creating or nurturing a
smaller one.
Yeah,
yes.
So they kind of, although they don't show that it is part of the bank, but they're creating their own innovation hub.
Yes,
and that innovation hub actually creating the new applications. Basically, in that way, it's more easier, obviously, to diffuse to bank.
Exactly,
because
exactly.
The bank itself is nurturing it. So that's one way they are doing. And it seems like it's a separate company, but it's really not. It is part of the bank itself because it's fully supported by the bank.
Yeah.
So that's one way things are happening. So hopefully things, you will see larger movement in near future. It's unavoidable. I mean, use of AI is unavoidable in financial sector. It's already happening, and you will see more and more application of it in near future. They already. Some banks has implemented robo-advisor, for example.
Yes, that's true.
For advising mortgage or loan or any other sorts of things, basically it goes through so when you go to bank, it will screen, that particular device will screen through certain question. And when you pass it through, then you refer to probably human. So that's already happening, but you will see in very near future much more will happen. But in terms of emerging economy, I think it will be good if they lead it.
Yes.
The problem is because once the Western countries has innovation, then the countries, developing countries, don't trust their own innovation.
Exactly.
They want to use the Western
imported.
And because obviously critical mass and trust and all other things goes on. And one classical example currently, being debated in India is a replacement, not replacement, but alternative of Twitter. So the India has some entrepreneur has developed Coup, and and Coup obviously somehow for some reason some Indian obviously now moving to Coup rather than being active on Twitter.
Wow.
And that's very interesting because
the numbers.
Many people in India think why we need Coup. Well, we have Twitter,
Yes.
But it is homegrown. It is something that supports several languages, which is actually a very particular characteristics of India. India has so many different languages. So, and different people feel comfortable in different languages. And also rural population in large part of India, they converse in the local languages. So they need that kind of platform, which actually is better in local product than
imported. Yes. Thank you.
I think leading now in African countries, I mean, Nigeria is obviously hub of the IT like India. So many people are there. I mean, of course, energy is going slightly in different direction, but if they use it in the
right direction,
then they can do wonder actually.
Yes, that is why I'm saying we can take the small good, to really overcome the bad. So I think there's opportunities. Yes, somebody was saying about like you said about Barclays. Unless you read those terms and conditions, you will know that these tech companies are owned by the bigger banks. You just need to read the terms and conditions and know, wow, this is actually owned by Barclays. So I think we recognize that, but often my concern is we should not just transfer the technology in developed world and just cascade it to the local economy. So we need to recognize the challenges and also the way people use technology. So thank you so much for this platform. It's nice to see those questions and the level of engagement. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there are other questions for you,
okay.
Emmanuel.
So what do you think of players as Monzo? Thank you, Frederick. Yes, I think Monzo is very good and they are disrupting, like I replied, with people not going to banks, with this COVID pandemic, everybody trying to stay indoor and do their banking. All these app-only bank are really disrupting it. Like, yes, you've got Starling, you've got Monzo, you've got Revolut, you've got all this technology deriving app-only banks. So I think they are disrupting the economy, the industry, but also we should be mindful of the context in which we are talking about. In disrupting in UK is not something you can just disrupt in Africa like that. It's going to be a very different challenge. But again, there are lessons we can learn that are quite transferable. So thank you, Frederick, for sharing that.
Sure.
Yes, so I think that's all for now, the questions. Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. So
just to tell the audience that next week we have speaker, Professor John Edwards. And John Edwards is someone who's working on AI-related tasks, AI-related tech research since 80s, actually. He's a very senior professor in Austin University. So he knows all around since the beginning of the AI, actually. So it might be very informative and very interesting talk. So anyone who can attend, I would definitely encourage to attend.
That will happen on the 17th of February at the same time, which is 1 o'clock in the afternoon UK time. And Professor Edwards will actually be contrasting the decisions made by AI as compared to the decisions made by people. So I'm certain it will be very interesting. And Professor Edwards is also a wonderful speaker.
Yeah, that's right.
That's fine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Emmanuel, thank you very much for your fantastic presentation.
You're welcome.
Your very candid and passionate views on the various questions that we had. Thank you, Professor Yogesh. Thanks to Professor Raman, our both co-hosts. Thanks to all the participants for their active involvement, their interesting questions. The entire infra for today's session was managed by Mr. Rajesh Bhagewadi and his team from SIBM Pune. And we had a very flawless infra availability for our sessions. And we also have our student team called iSmart, who always attend the sessions. And within a few minutes of the session ending, they'll actually share a few thank you e-frames, which are screen grabs. And if you were to come to SIBM, by the time you walk off the stage, they would actually come to you with a frame with a picture of you, just as a thank you gesture. So we'll share that with you, Professor Emmanuel. And
that's fine. I look forward to seeing it.
Sure. And once again, a warm invitation to everyone to join up on the 17th of Feb and listen to Professor John Edwards. So with that, with your permission, Dr. Emmanuel and Professor Yogesh, can we close our session for today?
That's fine. Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Thank you so much, Professor Raman.
Thank you, Professor Yogesh. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Stay safe, stay well, and look forward to seeing you soon in the not too distant future.
Very soon. Very soon. Thank you. Bye.